So the MCU's fourth phase is in full flow now. We have 3 Disney Plus shows that have been released. The reason I titled this MCU Disney Plus shows is because there are also like Netflix shows, there's Daredevil, etc., all those sort of things, but I'm just sticking to the Disney Plus shows that have been released as they interconnect with the movies. Well, I hope so. We haven't really seen much of that other than in Black Widow. But anyway, as of today of filming, Loki's finale has dropped and they have confirmed a season 2. Because we've only seen season 1 and that is the 3rd MCU Disney Plus show, we're going to rank all 3 of them, starting from the worst and moving to the best. Before we get into it, please let me know what your ranking would be down below, and let's get started. Coming in at 3rd and last place is The Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Now this was the easiest decision on this list, and for me it's by far the worst of these 3 shows. Now that's not to say that it's a bad show, it's just severely disappointing and the pacing is all off. Still, the action is fantastic, you can really see the high budget amongst it, and there's some really powerful plot lines like the Isaiah Bradley plotline, which I found one of the best parts of this show. It was good to see Zemo back, but I was kind of disappointed about the amount of screen time he actually did have. It does set up for future things in the MCU, but I don't know, I would have liked him more, and the lack of his iconic mask as well was disappointing just for marketing purposes. But I did have a lot of problems with this. I mentioned the pacing. Apparently there was this whole plotline about a virus taken out for obvious reasons, so there are parts where it just feels really awkward. The pacing's well off. There isn't much sense of urgency for the majority of this show. It took me about 4 episodes in to really enjoy something to the standard that MCU can deliver. But then after that it goes back to being quite slow and disappointing. Like the other shows on this list, after watching an episode each week, I was highly anticipating the next episode. But here, I watched it and I was like, I'm fine to wait a week for it. All the big conflicts and storylines weren't explored to the depth that you'd expect from a TV show, and that's where it felt really rushed at points. The villains of this show were very hit or miss. As I mentioned, Zemo was good, but wasn't here that much. Wyatt Russell was fantastic as John Walker. I know a lot of people, they were angry and they were sending the actor death threats, but at the end of the day, that's what his job was to do, was to annoy the people, was to be this fake Captain America, and I think he did a superb job. But the Flag Smashers, they dealt with a very important motive in terms of the real world, and unfortunately it wasn't executed well. And for such a big topic, it really failed to engage me too much. Carly Morgenthau, I don't like to criticize actors, but I just thought the actress who portrayed her didn't do a good job, and it was very hard to find what they were doing compelling at all. Another thing to top of that was executed poorly was this whole power broker thing. It began to gain some momentum, and then there was like this hints at who it could be, and we're like, oh, surely it's not them because that'd be quite lame. But then no, it was them, and another thing I didn't really care about at all. So as you can see on my score, it's not an awful show by any means, but it was severely disappointing, as I thought this was the safest bet, as it was something familiar, but they couldn't even really execute it to the standard I thought they could, at least. Coming in at 2nd place is WandaVision. This was a very tough decision to make, but I opted for this one in 2nd place. When I first heard that they were going to be making Disney Plus shows for the MCU, I was excited. But when they announced this one, I thought, okay, this sounds like quite a bad idea. And when you started to see footage, news about it, I thought it sounded like a very odd thing to do with all these sitcoms. I didn't feel like it translated well, but watching through it in a very tough period of my life where we were stuck in lockdowns, this was the main highlight of them each week. You know, I'd be stuck at home each day on video calls, but each week I would have WandaVision to look forward to, and it really did help me out a lot. There's something special about watching it when it first came out, waiting for each episode, because after each episode finished, that would spawn loads and loads of more different theories, which most of them were wrong. And it was just something special at the time. I'll be honest, it released the first 2 episodes at first and I wasn't completely hooked on, but I knew, I trusted, I was patient, unlike some, and I did think it paid off despite a disappointing finale. What's great about doing these shows is you can take minor or side characters like Wanda and Vision, put them in the lead, and you can develop them a lot more, make them bigger characters amongst this universe. And this is what exactly this show does. It propels Wanda to become the Scarlet Witch, and I look forward to seeing what the future holds for these characters. But it also allows them to flex their acting muscles, as they have a lot of dialogue. They are constantly changing decades in the sitcoms, which means they have to change up how they act, and I thought Elizabeth Olsen and Paul Bettany did a superb job, as well as Catherine Hahn, who was a very fantastic addition as, spoiler alert, the villain Agatha Harkness. The way it uses the sitcoms to its advantage to create this really unique environment in a genre which is completely saturated with all different content. This is something that stood out, especially in a TV show standard. And as I mentioned about all those different theories each week, and that the finale was a bit of a disappointment, is kind of partly down to the fans building up that the theories were a lot bigger than it actually was, which is inevitably going to lead to some disappointment. Many predicted Mephisto, but we didn't get that. But I did have some fantastic reveals like Evan Peters, which was a disappointing end to that as well, but hopefully there are some answers down the road. But narrowly coming in at first place is Loki. As you can see by the scores, this was an extremely tight ranking between WandaVision and Loki, and to be honest, the thing that pushed it over the line is the finale, because I thought it was the best episode of any of these MCU shows yet. It is a dialogue heavy show, but if you listen to what they're saying, it has some very interesting things, whether that's things to tie in with history, which you do jump back and forth between, variants, where the future of the MCU could go, or everything was very interesting. Even what people consider as the worst episode of this series, Lamentis, I enjoyed it more than them. Obviously it is the weaker of the 6, but it is that filler episode in a way. I still had a lot of fun with it. It's interesting to note that this Loki is the 2012 one, not the one who had this redemptive arc into becoming an anti-hero. So seeing him go through that process again, seeing him see what would have happened if he didn't pick up the Tesseract, it was very powerful, especially for that first episode. Tom Hiddleston always giving you what you'd imagine, but Owen Wilson was fantastic. I loved Mobius and his relationship with Loki, as well as Sylvie. Sophia Di Martino was fantastic as well. I loved seeing her in every scene along with Loki, because she was just such an interesting character. Just because we've always seen Loki as, you know, a side character or a villain, it was really great to see him here as the lead, as we got to know him a bit more, get to see a more sensitive side to him, and the fact that time is heavily involved with this whole thing, I loved it. Okay, I loved every aspect of it. The thing, maybe not every aspect, because I didn't like when there were plot holes in the MCU, they could just say, oh, that was meant to happen. But other than that, I found it really hard to find any real negatives, because I thought what they went for, they had done everything spot on. This is one where it's present, where it heavily involves with the future, as it introduces some things which I won't spoil in the finale, which just change how you view this phase going forth. And also, if you saw the after credit scene, it confirms season 2, the first MCU show to do so. Narrowly coming in first is Loki, just because it was more consistent, but it was great. So that is my ranking for all 3 Disney Plus MCU shows. In the future, I'm working on doing all the MCU shows, so Daredevil, Punisher, Defenders, Jessica Jones, Iron Fist, blah blah, etc, etc. It's a lot easier watching movies than it is to watch shows, especially when they have multiple seasons, so it's a work in progress. But anyways, I hope you enjoyed today's video, and please let me know what you thought of the Loki finale and what you think this means for the future. Anyways, I hope to see you in my next video. Peace.